Okay, so I'm going to make this little video about knives and survival tools. Okay, a lot of the modern guys who like to call themselves preppers. Okay, for SHTF or WROL. Okay, I was in this game back when we just called it survivalism, man. And in survivalism, you want to be able to survive and thrive when possible under any circumstances, including circumstances where the balloon hasn't gone off, the world hasn't ended, but you want to maintain more options in life. Okay, and back in starting in the late 1980s, I started buying survival gear and fancy knives and guns and all sorts of really cool shit. And among a lot of the things I bought were knives, because I was underage to buy guns, so I bought a lot of knives. And when I first joined the Marine Corps, you couldn't really buy guns on base until you could do it at age 18. You really couldn't get a lot until you're age 21. And so I bought knives, and I picked this one up at a pawn shop outside of Camp Lejeune for $60. And I bought some other knives because a lot of guys were buying these fancy ass knives and then pawning them. And so I also ended up with a Chris Reeve survival knife that was kind of cool. I think I paid $70 or $80 for that. And current for the time, and even back then, the Chris Reeve knife was kind of expensive. It was kind of known to be a good knife, really good knife. It's a survival knife where basically it's a hollow handle design, but it was made from all one piece of steel and was considered the strongest of the hollow handle survival knives. Now, later on, Chris Reeve started doing fixed blade knives with just craton or some kind of conventional handles. And what made the guy famous in the knife world was his one-piece hollow handle knives. And then later on, I guess he licensed out his design to Schrade, and they came out with a really good knockoff. And they have a series of these now with different sizes of blades, different blade styles. I think I want to try one of their Tantos too. I ended up selling my Chris Reeve knife and getting a couple of these, and then I bought some other tools for survival, which I'm going to go into in a few minutes. For day-to-day use, I use a Gerber multi-tool. This is kind of an everyday carry. I carry on a pouch and a belt. Or I'll just leave it in my gear. It depends on what I'm doing. But you cut wire with it, strip wire. It's got a couple knife blades. Got scissors, which I actually use quite a bit. Phillips head screwdriver, some of that kind of stuff. I don't think this is the best multi-tool around. But here's the thing. I'm pretty rough on stuff. And these things are strong. It's hard to break them. I've never broken one. It has carbide cutter bits in here. So the reason I carry it every day is not because I think it's the best, but it's because these things are strong, they're effective, they work, and it's not such a valuable thing that if I lose it or break it, it's the end of the world. And I don't know if they're made in Portland, Oregon, but it's a Portland company, Gerber. Now, I also have a Leatherman Wave, which I try to keep nice, although I use it a fair amount. Has all the same features as a Gerber, except that the cutter's not as strong, the pliers not as strong. It's a little bit more one-hand friendly. Okay, you're not going to flip it open like a butterfly knife, but you can one-hand open the blades on there. And it has this sheepfoot serrated blade, which is really useful for a lot of work. That's why it still has some caulking and other junk on it. But this shape of a blade for a work knife is a little better than a pointy blade for a lot of stuff. It's a little tricky to sharpen. It'll get dull faster, but as a work knife, it's really good. Something else I keep in my bug out bag is a pair of these Craftsman RoboGrip pliers. I'm not sure if they still make these, but these are really good. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you got to wrench on and pinch on and work on. RoboGrip pliers, man, these things are coming in useful. And so I got a couple of pair, and I pick them up when I see them around flea markets and yard sales, and always keep one in the bug out bag. Something else I keep in the bug out bag, but I don't use much, is I think it's like a West German mess kit thing. These are okay, but it's basically a knife, fork, spoon, bottle opener. It's you know, something that makes eating MREs a little bit easier. You know, eating out of food containers a little easier. And I keep it in this little pouch to keep it clean, not to wear it on a belt. And but getting back to this thing, this type of survival knife is really good for showing status. Okay, why am I showing this on YouTube? I want to impress people. Would I carry this in a WROL situation or something? Well, maybe, maybe not. Okay, because here's the reality: it's expensive. You know, I wouldn't want to break it, and they have a rumor of being brittle steel. The other thing is it's heavy, and you know, granted, you could really fuck someone up with this. And a friend of mine, and it's really intimidating looking. A friend of mine actually borrowed this once when I was in the Marine Corps. He'll remember this knife because he used it to recover his car stereo speakers that somebody, or actually no, his stereo speakers that somebody had, let's say, borrowed without his permission in the barracks. And yeah, they got to look at him being really pissed off with this knife in his hand, and he got his speakers back. So you know, there is something to say about intimidation factor on a big, ugly, dangerous-looking knife. The teeth here are actually sharp enough to be dangerous when you handle a knife, and not, I mean, too wide to really do anything useful with. The serration on the back, equally useless. And that's why I prefer, for survival knives that I'd actually use on a regular basis, I don't want that. Okay, I don't want the teeth across the back at all. Hollow handle on there is cool. It's heavy duty. This thing comes with a couple of spikes that stick out here, so that you could put a carabiner on the back of here and then use this as a grappling hook. Okay, now whoever was so fucking retarded that they came up with the idea that you're going to take your $250 survival knife and throw it up in a tree with a rope attached to the other end of it, and you're holding on to the other end of the rope. Okay, let's figure this out, okay? You got this 1 pound, very sharp, heavy steel knife where if it's flying through the air and hits somebody backwards, it's going to do damage. If it hits the blade first, holy shit. And so you're supposed to throw this up in a tree and use it as a grappling hook instead of, you know, a couple pieces of welded together rebar, which is what we use in my unit, okay? And if you hit, you know, a good grappling point with this thing and use it to, like, swing across something like Tarzan or something, well, your knife is stuck in a tree and it stays there. If you miss, then you have this 1 pound piece of very sharp, heavy steel flying back in your direction. I don't know. What else do you want to do? Throw knives at yourself? What about sharpening a boomerang and throwing and catching that? I mean, there's some shit out there that people have invented that just, you know, it's not that bright, okay? So kind of like the concept of a sharpened boomerang, okay? Sometimes you just, you know, it's cool for impressing people, but you're not going to use it for its intended purpose. Now here's something kind of cool. This is a knife I picked up recently at a flea market. It's a Boker, which Boker is actually a pretty good brand. I understand that Boker Plus is their Chinese-made stuff, but it's decent, and it's basically very similar to a karambit design, except that what the guy did is he took a karambit, which normally has a blade that sticks out this far, and he ground off the rest of the blade so that it would be a flat knife, or more or less a flat knife, so you could do, you know, little chopping cuts with it. And interestingly enough, he took, you know, kind of like a little bit of a tanto point and saved a little bit of a tanto point while making it a pretty useful work knife for cutting. And with a reverse curve on the handle, you actually have a lot of blade control, almost like a carpet knife or a work knife, but it's a little bigger than that. And I think that's only about a 2.5 inch blade. Okay, it's not a whole lot of blade, but you have that good big handle, small blade control you get with like a working knife. And then you've got the little ring handle. You can kind of snap this onto stuff like a carabiner. Now, it did have a pocket clip that bent on me, so I just got rid of it. And it makes this thing pretty flat, pretty small on a pocket. And then if you hold it karambit style, you could fight with it. I mean, there's not a hell of a lot of blade there to work with, so I'm not going to say that's a super deadly weapon, but you could fuck somebody up with it. I mean, so in a pinch you could use it as a weapon, but as a work knife, this is kind of good. And because of the kind of work I do, you know, I don't want people to get all intimidated whipping out a big knife. So this kind of works for that kind of stuff. So getting on to survival, okay? And you're going to see some stuff in my videos about, you know, economic survival, okay? It's hard times for a lot of people right now, but you know what? Hard times come and go. And so years ago, I had this Chris Reeve survival knife. And about a year and a half ago, my job prospects were pretty slim, and in my regular career field, nothing was really going to be open to me for quite a long time. And so I got into doing, you know, some handyman fix-up, remodel work, and I was selling my stuff and buying tools. And so I found out that my Chris Reeve knife had gone up quite a bit in value, and I sold it on eBay. I bought a couple of replacement knives, which are these Shrades, which I don't have to, I mean, granted, you know, the contents of a bug-out bag can add up to $1,000 in a hurry. But because this bug-out bag doesn't have a Chris Reeve knife hanging off the side, it's not $1,200 or $1,300. And what I did was, the Shrades come with a black sheath that's not really all that good. I replaced that with a Spec Ops brand sheath. The sheath costs almost more than a knife, but it's the same color as the bug-out bag. I cord wrapped this in green, so it's all the same color. And it's in this state at least, if you carry a full-size knife inside of the pack, they might consider that concealed weapon. If it's on the outside of the pack, it's legal. So you know, if I really need to transfer that to my belt, I can unsnap the stuff here, untie it, and wear it on a belt. But by just having a pack around like this, it's legal. And quite often, if I go anywhere with this pack, I take it off as quickly as I can. I don't want this thing hanging on my back all the time. And that actually puts a knife more within reach than if it's on my belt. So, because I always know where my pack is. I always know what side of the pack the knife is on. It's not, you know, it's not that hard to get at that thing. So wearing a knife on the side of the pack and then not having one on the belt is not that bad. Or just carrying a folding knife on my person, that's not such a bad thing. And you know, and again, I because of the nature of some of the work I do, I want to have a non-threatening profile. So that's part of how that works. But getting back to survival, economic survival, okay? So this is a DeWalt item, right? And you'll see me doing stuff about power tools. So I sold my Chris Reeve survival knife on eBay, and I turned around and bought 2 of these knives. And I bought this, a DeWalt nailer, okay? It's a DeWalt cordless nailer. And started making money with it right away. I was working for a guy building this food cart trailer, and the day this showed up, we needed it. And I started using it. And so we're going to show another section of a video here in a minute, but think about what you're using for survival, okay, for making money, for a living. And because there is such a thing as too much survival gear that isn't helping you survive. And I knew that at the point where I had like a dozen fancy survival knives that were all worth, you know, a fair amount of money for each one, it's neat to own all that stuff, it really is, but I also needed to make money. And just selling your stuff to pay rent and buy food may not be so smart when you want to think about what tools you would have to be economically viable in a declining situation. And then if it's a growing situation, if it's an economic recovery, you still want to remain economically viable. You don't want to be one of these people who is thinking, well, you know, when shit hits the fan, I'm going to do okay. And then what do you do when things get better? Okay, are you still going to be the guy living in the woods and eating bark, or you want to go back to society and start living well? And how are you prepared for economic recovery? Okay, I'm thinking ahead to the economic recovery right now. I'm going to have a contractor's license, and in the economic recovery, I plan on doing a little better than average, hopefully. And this is a part of that plan. So it's not just a shit hit the fan plan; it's a post shit hit the fan plan. And that's something to really consider when you're transitioning from, you know, your big fancy survival knife to post shit hit the fan plans, and how you're going to survive an economic recovery. And it's one thing to survive an economic recovery, it's another thing to get back into, you know, a good mode where you can buy cool stuff and go out to eat and buy those, you know, all those really cool things you want to have that are available during a recovered economy.